Your time is now. The world needs leaders. It's up to you to answer the call. Be better in business. Be better in life. Joined by our host, Chris Book. This is Leading by the Book.
Hey guys, welcome to Leading by the Book. I'm Chris Book. Hope your week is off to a great start. Got an awesome show for you today. Got a guest coming on that has played a very important role in my life and has so much wisdom and insight to share with you that you can put to work right away in your own lives. But before we get to that, quick reminder, if you want to get in touch with me, you can always email me, chris@leadingbythebook.com, or find me at leadingbythebook.com. You can also get in touch with me on Twitter @ChrisBook and on LinkedIn @ChrisBook. One other thing, a lot of you have asked, how can you support the show? And it's really simple. Just spread the word, share the show with as many people as possible. Helping us grow our audience really is just the best way to make sure that we can keep bringing you this content each week. So without further ado, here's this week's show. Our guest today in Leading by the Book is somebody that I've known for, well, I shouldn't say known. We met probably 15, 20 years ago now and played a significant role in my life that I don't even know you knew about.
Sure didn't.
Very, very pivotal. But that guest is Pat Murphy. Pat, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So most of our listeners will not be baseball people. In the baseball world, obviously, your name is tremendously well known. But for those of us that come from more of a corporate background here or sitting in cubicles, so Pat is a lifetime baseball person. Right now, you're a coach with the Milwaukee Brewers. You've been a head coach at the Division I level at Notre and Arizona State. You actually won 1,000 games. I didn't know that number until I was doing my homework here. 1,000 games as an NCAA coach. 4-time Pac-10 Coach of the Year. Managed in both the minor and the major leagues. And you've also worked in the front office as well. And now you're with the Brewers, working with Brewers Manager Craig Counsell, who's actually a former player of yours at Notre Dame.
Right.
So your impact and your story here in the baseball world is, I think, pretty profound.
I've been pretty lucky. I really have. I've worked with great people, great organizations, universities, professional organizations, internationally. I've been very, very lucky, and I'm very grateful, and I'm still learning.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really fascinating, and the reason I wanted to get together with you is on the leadership topic, and obviously that's what the show is about. And for the last few minutes here, we've been talking pretty deeply about leadership. But you've led so many different generations in the baseball world. You've dealing with kids like me that were 16 years old, coming out of high school. Now you're working with guys making $25 million a year in the major leagues, pretty well-established guys. And then you've been in between there in the minors where you've got teams filled with 30-year-olds and 18-year-olds alike. So this idea of how you lead groups and how you apply different leadership principles in different times, I think is fascinating. And I think that the first question I have for you right out of the gate is, over the years, how has your approach to leadership amongst these different groups changed?
Well, I think it has to. I think to survive, you have to understand that it's not about you, first and foremost. You got to check your ego daily because your decisions and your comments and everything can't be from ego. And I think that once those groups, have I changed? A ton. Once those groups realize that you're not about you, you respect yourself and you're going to take care of yourself, but at the same time that you really do have a mission to try to impact people. And it can be slowly, it can be not at all. But as soon as they know you're not there to hurt them and you're there to hold them to a standard and you're there to give them the truth, I think you got a chance to impact, whether they're 8 or 80.
Sure. So with this idea of being deliberate with leadership, which is what I think you're describing there, my theory is that right now we talk about leadership a lot, at least in the business world. And it's one of these things that ends up somewhere on a resume, somewhere buried. And it's like, yeah, I got computer skills and I have leadership skills. But I think the thing that really separates people that lead well from those that just talk about it is being deliberate and having a specific mission. And one of the things you were talking about earlier is how with different people, you push them or don't push them in different ways. And this idea of recognizing the specific situation and doing what is called. I think that's kind of the remarkable indicator of a leader is your ability to recognize that, but to be deliberate and have a mission with each person that you come across.
Yeah, I think, too, that you have to be careful and that it has to be genuine. The timing of it doesn't have to be impeccable. I mean, it isn't a lot of what that in my world, what happens is their response to things and their mindset. And sometimes no thinking is the best way to perform, and just well prepared and doing it with a confidence and a conviction. But leading them away from the competition is mostly about continuing them to question themselves and to get into their own minds and realize they can control their attitude, they can control their approach, and doing that in all different ways. And I don't think I think if they know you're genuine, I think that, and they know you love them, I think you can hit them in all different ways and they'll accept it. They might not accept it right then the way you want them to, but you're not trying to screw it up. But sometimes your timing's off or your approach is off, but they'll come back to you and you won't lose them because they know you love them and they know you have information for them.
The common denominator there is trust. If you got one guy that you got to get on, you got to get in his face, you got another guy that you got to put your arm around, the thing they both have to have in common is they have to trust that you have their best interest at heart, trust that you understand them, that you know them.
That's a good point. I mean, but oftentimes they don't trust you yet because they're just getting to know you. Maybe it's early in the season. Maybe they just met you, whatever it might be. So you have to know that when you're leading someone else or you're communicating or relating to someone else, other people are watching. They're getting a feel for you. And they're seeing if you're deceptive. They're seeing if you're just putting on a show. They're seeing if you're coming from ego. They're seeing if you're transactional. So it's important that you live in that, you walk your path in a way that is reflective of who you really are. And sometimes, I'm kind of outgoing. I use a lot of words, but I try to portray that I do care about them. And over time, you build that relationship, and I think you can have an effect. But the worst type, I think, is the one that's trying too hard, the coach or the leader that's trying to force their ways or prove themselves to the player. Sometimes a player, I know in the big leagues, a player will put up a wall and be like, hey, I've seen jokers like this a lot. And they may be well-intended, they might have good information, but they put up a wall because they're not comfortable with the relationship yet. So I think it's important that you come off genuine and that you realize the path you're walking. You don't have to try. You just have to be. And if it's genuine, it's humble, it's not coming from ego, and you have life experience that can help them.
You pointed out something there talking about coaches that are kind of their way or the highway. And, it triggered something in my mind because as leaders, our primary responsibility is to make the people on our teams better for the betterment of the team. But you think at the lower levels. You think of a high school coach or a summer ball coach, and you get a lot of guys at that level that are not sophisticated enough to look and say, all right, this kid needs this kid needs this. They're guys that are, whether they're reliving their glory days or whatever it is. And what scares me to death about that is the amount of talent that has probably been cut short, that walked away from the game or got themselves in a mental hole because of that. So
I think that happens here, though. I mean, you can evaluate coaches. Everybody throws the high school coach under the bus, and I was included in that probably many times in my past. You're like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and this guy, you really can't measure how they might help a guy. They may not help him in my world of baseball. They may not help him as much as you'd like them to, or as much as they could. But I think it happens in the big leagues. It happens in major college because I've been part of it, and I've done it, where you don't look at the possibilities of every kid. You don't allow yourself to see everybody's, what could be, and therefore you limit yourself and how you affect them. So although everybody wants to consider themselves, and coaches are evaluated based on their wins, and I've got a gaudy winning percentage. I haven't always helped guys, and that's what you live with. Like, how could I have helped this guy more? How could I have impacted this guy better? How could I have related to this guy and maybe brought more out of him? I think that's where you're going to go, because you just can't possibly get to everyone. And I think Mike Krzyzewski or Popovich or any of the great coaches will tell you that, we're limited in what we can do. but we can also do harm. And it's important that you recognize that and try to limit it.
That's the burden of responsibility with leadership, though. And everybody wants to be the guy calling the shots, but there's a flip side to it. Do you study leadership or even the psychology side of it? I mean, is this something that you still actively work on,
yes,
even now, as long as you've been in the game?
Oh, no question. The more you learn about it, is the more you realize that you could have been a lot better at what you did, and that it kind of haunts you a little bit. But I think, generally speaking, you can only hold it to a draw. You can't win it over. But I think I've been impactful to many people, but I also think that I fell short in many people. But I think the important thing is individually, even to call yourself a leader seems a little, seems like too much ego for me. I mean, I want to be a person who gives. I want to be a person who knows that my life is worthwhile. It can be measured by how much I've helped others. There's no win-loss record or anything like that can judge that for me. I try like heck every day to say, hey, take the ego out of it, and let's go from Jump Street and see if we can't get guys to feel better about who they are and realize their possibilities and bring out their best self if you can, or at least lead them to a point where they can bring out their best self, even if they don't like what you said. So that's kind of how I do it day to day, and it makes the job really fulfilling. You still ache with the losses and celebrate the wins, but it's all a teaching moment and it's all a journey. So, but the concept of being labeled a leader, the concept of being labeled in some form, probably everybody's a leader.
I think they have to be.
Right.
If you're sitting in a cubicle, if you're the CEO, you can lead, maybe in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I look at it this way. If you're sitting in the cubicle and you want to be the CEO, you've got to lead. That's how you make an impact.
Right.
When you look back, is there a favorite moment from a leadership perspective that sticks out? So, it's some kid that couldn't throw the ball back to the pitcher and you got him through, or, because to me, you've got the guys that are going to hit 40 bombs and, okay, they're great, but there are these little moments with people that sometimes shouldn't even be there, and you get them over the hump or something like that, and they just stick out they're these incredibly rich moments when you reflect on the past.
It's funny. I had no idea you were going to ask me that, so here's what came to my mind just now. I take the job at Notre Dame the fall of 1987. Our 88 was our first season. We're getting ready to start our season. And to say the least, as a 28-year-old getting that job, I was full of energy, fire. Notre Dame was my dream job. It was a part-time job. They didn't take baseball seriously or didn't want to. It wasn't a funded program. We didn't have many scholarships, if any at all. We didn't have a field to speak of. There was a kind of a less than high school field on campus, but it's still a great university, and you got great young men. I took over for a great man who took a bigger baseball job, but there wasn't a lot of success in the program, wins and losses wise. So I take over the program, and I'm running it like a powerhouse program, and I'm telling them how important it is, and I'm telling them that it's as important as your academics, and I'm telling you that, I'm practicing way too much. There wasn't limits on practice then. I'm practicing way too much. I'm working the bejesus out of them. I really am. I'm inappropriate in how hard I'm working them, and it's a little bit of this is going to be a reflection of me. So I'm going overboard, and there's some ego involved. But I'm, needless to say, preparing this bunch of young men who've never won. We're getting ready for our first trip in North Carolina. We're going to play Duke and Wake Forest. It's 1988, and let me go back 1 second. I'm sorry. That was the start of the season, but before that, we were bringing the University of Miami up to play in a fall series during the famous football game, Notre Dame Miami, and we're playing Miami in a series. And same thing, we're preparing for this thing. We're playing the number one team in the nation. We got no chance. They're throwing 2 first-round draft picks, Alex Fernandez and Joe Gray. And the day before the game in the locker room, a player comes up to me. And earlier, that player had been contemplating not playing baseball because his academics were too important to him. And I told him flat out, baseball's every bit as important in your life. So I was questioning how much he cared. Long story, he looked at me in the locker room and he said, Murph, you don't think we can beat these guys, do you? And I looked at him and I said, no, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. But he put me on my heels, almost to say, you've done all this to prepare us. You've went overboard. We've missed dinners. We've had no free time. You've taken this thing to a level of seriousness that we've never known. And now I'm asking you, and we're playing the number one team in the nation right out of the chute, and I'm asking you flat out, do you think we can beat these guys? And you hesitated. And I did. I hesitated. And he looked back at me and he said, Murph, we're going to beat these guys. I get chills telling that story. And we went and we beat them twice. And what I came to realize in that moment is that all my work and all my thing, yeah, it does work. It does happen. You do prepare teams. And they start to believe. Even if you don't, they'll start to believe because they are prepared. And that kid looked at me and he said, we're going to win. And we went out and won. And I realized that the players play. You prepare them. Take your emotion and your doubt and your negative feelings out of it. You prepare them right. They can achieve it. So that's the moment I think of. That was, to me, a turning point. Like, hey, prepare these guys and they will perform. And we went on to win 7 years. We went on to average over 45 wins a year in a 56-game schedule. So, things can happen.
Is that the most fun you've ever had coaching?
At Notre Dame?
Yeah. Even that particular season.
Yeah, that was really special. I don't know the most fun I could ever measure.
Maybe fun's not the right word.
Yeah.
But the thing you just look back fondly, and at the time you feel like you're not doing anything, but you just look back and you think, wow, that was a really special time.
I didn't even, people say to me all the time, like, how did you do it? How'd you turn that program around? I mean, we created standards. I didn't write them down. We just created standards. I made them write them down, in their minds and their goals. And we created standards and we lived by those standards. And it was a priority. And our intent on what was to be done was clear. And nothing, and I mean nothing, could break it. And these are the same group that were 15-30 the year before, were 48-19. And if my memory is serving me correct, I know they were 15-30 the year before. And that same team in my first year won 40 games. And, it was like, wow, this is real. This works. And we built on that. Now, along with that was a lot of, I was overcooked on a lot of stuff. I overdid some things, but the discipline was great. The camaraderie, those kids are all still close friends. It impacted a lot of people, and mostly because they looked at each other and said, hey, we got a nutty coach. This guy's out of control. But, hey, we're going through this together, and I got your back. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Good memory for me.
You touched on a lot of different things in there. Obviously, you touched on the idea of humility and leadership, which is such a tremendous skill. But I think when you kind of get to the end of the day here, it's those moments like that make leadership so worthwhile. Because there's not a lot of other things you can do in your life that really can impact you that way. But something that you also touched on there that is really fascinating, me coming from the business world, the idea of values and standards. So there's a phrase that I heard from some retired SEALs. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And, I'm kind of fascinated, at least in the business world, because we've got mathematical models for everything, and we micromanage things out the wazoo. But the teams that do well are the teams that very simply understand, what is their organization trying to do? What are the 3 to 4 things that really matter to them in order to do it? So the values, and then the level of standards. And it's simple things too. We would be on teams, and it'd be just a matter of, here's here's what we're going to do with our PowerPoint presentations. They are going to be this detailed. They're going to be proofread 4 times. Everything is going to be sharp, just so that everybody else in the company sees that we have our crap together. It doesn't take a genius to do that.
Yeah.
But it's those standards that really matter. So when you come in here to Milwaukee, this is a team that they've always been, at least in the last few years, but before you guys got here, they were fine. Probably middle of the pack in the Central. And presumably, the culture has changed. Obviously, the results have really changed. You're in first place now. But has the talent really changed, or is it just the way that talent has led and the standards and the expectations changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't really know what it was like before. I really don't. I know they were going through a rebuilding process here when I took over, when I came on board. So the first time I was here, it was rebuilding. And our leader, Craig Counsell, is our manager, general manager, David Stearns, and Matt Arnold, assistant general manager. I know they had a vision in mind. And they set standards of the type of talent they were going to bring in. I think I was brought in as a guy with an experienced coaching background at all levels to try to support Craig as he began his journey as a leader. But certainly, I don't know that we've created a brand new culture. I don't know that we've actually what we've done, other than it reflects on the scoreboard that we're winning a lot more games. But I tend not to look and evaluate it. I tend to look at what do we need to do today, and we got a lot to do today. And I tend to look at the way we can improve, and how can we make the culture better. What are some standards we can implement even more concrete? It's very complicated. I'm telling you, big league baseball, my 4 years, it's complicated. There's a business aspect of it that I don't understand fully. There's an analytics aspect of it that's very helpful. There's a personal relationship aspect of it that I think I do understand and trying to get better at. And there's a competition aspect of it that's incredible. You're facing the best in the world. How do you do it? How do you rate it? How do you keep in the right 6-month season, regular season? How do you keep them going? So it's complicated, but I don't know that on paper it looks like we're a lot better. We improved 86 wins last year with the smallest budget in baseball. That looks really good. But I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I know Craig, if he ever listened to this, would start laughing because he says, Murphy, you're always looking for what we need to do next. Absolutely. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't want to sit still. I want to keep going to see if we can improve it. If it ends up in a championship, so be it. If it doesn't, I still think we're moving in the right direction.
I think a lot of our listeners probably won't fully grasp this idea, but right now you're on the coaching staff. Your manager is Craig Counsell, who somebody that you recruited, went to Notre Dame, played for you. He went on to a solid major league career and is now back here managing in his home state. I don't think there's a parallel for something like that in the business world. I'm a vice president of a company. I bring on an intern out of college, and a decade or 2 decades later, he's the CEO and I'm working for him. That doesn't really happen the way it is here. Mm-hmm. But part of it, I guess, is maybe that's what makes baseball so special. But what is that dynamic like? Yeah,
Craig and I have maintained our relationship for 20 years after he, left Notre Dame. I think he left in 92. So 2002, 2012. So it's 25 years. We've just really kept in good contact. I've always respected him and really enjoyed the conversation. He's given me a lot of conversation. We've talked a lot about the game, and he, was around my teams at Arizona State. We kept in good touch when I was with the Padres, and he actually, offered me the bench job when he took the manager's job, and the Padres wouldn't give him permission to actually engage in conversations with me about it officially. So I took the interim job with the Padres, and then I joined them after the 15 season. It's been great. We're friends. We respect each other. I think I bring a certain element to the organization that that is needed, and I think he does a magnificent job. I've learned a ton from him, not just about the big league game, just about leadership. I mean, he does it way different, with a different way, and in a lot of ways it's very similar. But it's been great. We have a lot of fun.
Well, I think that's really smart on his part to want to bring you in right out of the gate. You know, looking back on my career, there are a lot of folks that I worked for, people that then became friends after I worked for them. They went on to different roles. And if I found myself as the CEO of a major organization, you know, not a lot of people, I think, would try to surround themselves with those people. Because right now we've got this idea that CEOs have to be decisive, and they've always got to be right. They've got to be the Steve Jobs of the world, or the Zucks of the world. Now we got a generation of 20-year-olds running around,
Right.
you know, kind of like dictators. It takes a lot of humility, though, to want to surround yourself with people like that. But you think about the blessing in that sounding board and that trust. That's a really wise move right out of the gate for someone that's a first-time manager.
Right. I think it was a natural from when we talked about it. I was very thrilled that I was honored that he'd want me part of it. But it's, you know, I've learned, like I said, he's done as much for me as I could ever do for him in this role. I've learned a ton, and it works. It's a simple thing. We rarely agree, which might find funny, but, you know, we're constantly disagreeing, but we don't take offense with our disagreements. I'm constantly bring things up, but I'm not standing in his shoes, and he's not standing in mine. So that's the beauty of it. We know what the role is, and I think it's worked so far, but we still got to keep going. You know, that's all there's to it. We still have to keep yearning to get better and be open for growth, and it's a way of life.
If you did agree all the time, would it work?
Probably not. You know, probably not. I think it's good. The back and forth is good. But we have a whole staff of guys that are responsible for this. Our pitching coach and hitting coaches and first base coach, third base coach, bullpen catchers. They're all part of this thing. You know, our advanced scouts guys are unbelievable. Our video guys, unbelievable. Our clubhouse people, trainers, strength guys. I mean, it's a great unit when everyone really respects each other and everyone is on board. I think this is a cohesive and connected group that I've ever been part of. You know, and that makes it fun coming to work every day.
That's also what allows teams to work in the context of, you know, here you've got guys making a lot of money, so it's very individual in that regard. And you know, even in corporate America, like we can talk about team first, and this is our company's mission and all that. Well, at the end of the day, I mean, people are still there to pay their mortgage, to pay for their kids' school and all that. And when you can create an environment where that doesn't necessarily get lost, but there's this whole other idea of we versus us, or excuse me, we versus me.
Right.
That's a powerful thing.
Yeah, you know, and what I'm learning about this whole thing, and this whole team concept, and, you know, I think team has to be practiced, just like we prepare mentally, we prepare physically more than anything, which I think is in a 6-month season might be overdone and might be just a matter of habit. But we do all the strength and conditioning, all the prehab, rehab. We do everything for these guys physically. Do we do enough mentally for them? Even though they're from all walks of life, different countries, different phases of their life, different economic situations. Do we do enough for them mentally to prepare them? And do we do enough to train them about team? And I don't mean anything formal. I don't think it would go over big. But I do think there should be a team preparation, so to speak, where we're doing things that create that connectedness in each other. And I think we should do a bunch of mental skills stuff that isn't, again, formal. Is something that's just part of the natural flow of the day that helps them get in the right frame of mind mentally. So I think those couple things could be added. I think we're working on that. I think we recognize that.
Do you have a team mental health practitioner? You do?
Yes. He's great. Matt Krug, he's fantastic.
You know, you're starting to see, I think it actually, in the business world, I think it started with the hedge funds and the traders. You know, actually, I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show Billions, but
yeah, I love it.
That idea
that
of having
role,
that, That's certainly become prevalent in that world, and I do think that we need to see that elsewhere because the theme of this has been it's not necessarily about the physical abilities as much as it is what's between the ears. So there's
emphasizing that and not just having it serve a role. Oh, we got to have this person, person on our staff because they're a mental skills guy and everybody has them. No, really implementing them into your team and understanding the limitations of it, and because like in that show, which I love, that woman plays a great mental health professional, but there's also personal things there and there's ego there and there's all sorts of things going on. So I think that's very common, but just to handle it all. And that's what I think Counsell does such a great job of, is that he's taught me not to sweat the little stuff. You know what I mean? And he uses a phrase all the time. I just don't want to give any oxygen to that. And it's cool, and I'm the guy that says, hey, well, Counsell, if you don't pay attention to that little piece of dirt on the floor, in a month you're going to have a big pile of dirt in the corner, and he looks at things a little differently sometimes, and I think he's right a lot of it, so he's helped me, and we contemplate that type of stuff.
So switching gears a little bit here, coming from the NCAA background, you got kids that are 17 to 22. You leave NCAA baseball, you transition into pro ball. While it's still baseball, that's a dramatic change from a career perspective and from a day-to-day perspective. And I think a lot of people listen to the show go through changes either with different roles in the same company or even career changes. And it can really throw you if you're not careful. So for you managing that transition, what sticks out with key for being key, I should say?
Well, I mean, for sure, willingness to be humble, willingness to take a step back. I was at the top of my field, so to speak, in a lot of people's eyes with financially and success on paper. And
you won 1,000 games. I'd say you're at the top of the field.
But so that happened, and then I was involved in a NCAA investigation that the school made the move to use me as the focal point and kind of threw me under the bus for some of the paperwork violations and things like that. And I didn't handle that very well. No, that's never happened to me. Nobody's ever thrown me on the bus for anything. And, my reviews and compliance were tremendous and all that kind of stuff. So I really got shocked by this. So, and we were obviously a top 5 program in the country for about 5 straight years. And then all of a sudden I get thrown on the bus and look like it's my fault. And the people would believe it because of my personality and some of my ways that I've chose to handle things. And so sure enough, I'm out there and nobody wants to touch me because all of a sudden he must have done some bad stuff. And I couldn't talk about it because the NCAA has a thing that they'll charge you with unethical conduct if you talk about the investigation. So all of a sudden, I'm kind of stuck. I never felt that way in my life, and I'm raising my 8-year-old at the time by myself, and it was ugly. So I was knocked off my feet. Had a lot of supporters, but really didn't know where to go and didn't know how to explain myself. Was defensive, was down and out. All of a sudden, I make this transition. I get an opportunity, but it's at a, small level. I don't know how permanent it's going to be, but it just became a nice transition, and you had to change. I had to change a lot. I had to take a step back, different role, and seeing if I could do it. And it's worked out nicely. I didn't dream I'd be in the big leagues, didn't aspire to be in the big leagues, to be honest with you. I want to go right back into college. That was my life for 25 years. Why would I ever change it? Those are the people that I thought I could affect. And so, you end up in pro ball, then you end up in the big leagues and still learning. So the transition has been easy. Things that stick out is I remember going into one of my first player development meetings and the Padres and sitting there and nobody asked my opinion. Well, my whole life for 25 years, I was the one asking for opinions, and my opinion sure as hell mattered. And all of a sudden I'm in the player development and nobody asked my opinion. And I was so bitter at those guys driving home. I was like, how could they not ask for my opinion? How could they? and it all was about me and my ego. And I sat back later and I'm like, wait a minute. They didn't ask for my opinion because I just started. How would I know? Well, they weren't courteous. Well, hey, it's a big boys game. They weren't courteous. So what? You're gonna make it about you now? Grow up. You got to earn it. So I was back at square one, and I had to earn it. And I'm very proud of doing it. I had a lot of time to think and a lot of time to and a little known sidebar is I wanted to be a great example for my son. He had all he had known in baseball. Grew up in the dugout. He is now 9 years old. And I wanted to be a great example for him. I wanted him to see his dad handle this with grace. And I don't necessarily think I did it with total grace, but I did a lot of it with grace. And I earned my way back. And, is there bitterness about how it was handled, whether it was fair? It doesn't matter. A lot of people suffered a lot worse than I did, and a lot more important ways than I ever did. But you build yourself back up and you learn from it. And here you are trying to build yourself again, so yeah, it's a great experience. Great experience.
There's a lot in that answer that I'm really curious about. But the thing that most sticks out, we don't like going through crappy circumstances. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes getting railroaded. And I watched that situation from afar, and it seemed that you were really dealt a bad hand just in terms of the way people handled it. But, we all have these bad experiences in our life to some degree. Is there a point where you're thankful for it, though, for what it shaped you and taught you?
I think that a lot. A lot of people say, man, you got vindication, or, man, you really must feel great. And it isn't about the vindication at all. It's more about the learning experience. And, yeah, life would be different, but there'd be another challenge there. There's so much to be learned. I just read something the other day about going through hard times, and it really reveals a lot about who you are. I think it's built me up inside. It's built me up inside. I like when you look at the whole situation, the NCAA, the school, and myself, and if that was a little soap opera, I kind of like my role in it. I kind of like the character that person is, so I'll stick with it. Is it perfect? No. Did I handle things poorly at times? Yes. But I kind of like that character, and I'm very thankful that I could go through that, because we're all going to go through sticky stuff. If you're aspiring to be in impactful situations, you're going to go through sticky stuff, and you'll handle it better the second time. But I feel pretty good about getting through it.
Failure is. I think it was John Wooden, that said, failure is not fatal, but failure to change might be. I think about this a lot with kids, and I had a bunch more questions on that topic, but this just really sticks out. Even now I have a 2-year-old, I have twin 2-year-olds, and little things like watching them climb up on the couch. I can go pick them up and put them on the couch. Right. They need to fall off it like 3 or 4 times or struggle with it and get through it in order to one, master it. But there's a level of satisfaction that comes from failing at something and conquering it that you can't get anywhere else.
Right. Especially when you have things in the world, and people out there have, again, been through a lot of tough stuff, but when it's not under your control, when you get screwed, or however you want to term it, it doesn't matter if that statement is true or not. If you're thinking you got screwed, and everything points to it that you got screwed, and you go about it with that attitude, it's not going to serve you. If you go about it with the attitude like, I could have done things differently, it is a kind of a bad hand. But in proportion to the rest of the bad hands that have been dealt out there in the world, it is what it is. Don't take time to think about it. Don't take time to feel sorry for yourself. Consider yourself lucky, because that does give you the opportunity. And keep that in mind. When you're still you go down that path and you're having a pity party, quickly just take yourself out of it and go, this is stupid, man. Other people have had a lot worse stuff. This is your journey. You're not going to go through life and never have somebody deal you a bad hand, or you get a strike 3 called on you when it was way outside. It's going to happen. And, it affects a lot of people's lives. But now you have a choice to respond. And response, to me, is the most important thing about competition. How do you respond to something? Quickly, swiftly, with the right mindset, and without ego. And that's what I'm trying to do. I don't know that I did it perfectly, but that's what I'm trying to do.
Do you study Stoic philosophy? Because what you just described, that's Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. No. So many of these ancient philosophers.
No, I watch Billions.
You summed it up in a nutshell.
I watch Billions and Ray Donovan. I do have I've run into a lot of really wonderful people, and I can tell you one of my most valued possessions, if you will, are these group of people that I have in my life, former players and former coaches and just people I've run across in life, because I say yes a lot. I say yes. I don't. I look at everything as an opportunity to meet a new person or whatever. And I've met some great people, and we talk about this kind of stuff. Trainer for the Diamondbacks, Ken Crenshaw, has become friends. He coached my kid in basketball, and we've become really good friends. And we trade stories and books, and we never have just a boring conversation. We always get right into it. Dr. Jason Kobler, a chiropractor in Phoenix, that he's helped my son a bunch and become great friends with. I was trying to raise a kid by myself. I didn't know what I was doing. It took a village, and I just met so many wonderful people there. And we don't have these shallow conversations. We always have pretty good conversations and get right to it and hold each other accountable. And I got so many wonderful friends out there. A guy in the business world, Harvey Jabera, who I introduced to some people in baseball and now is part owner of one of the teams. But same thing. We talk about real stuff. We talk about parenting. We talk about, is this right and why? And talking to people that know. I mean, so that gets me excited in life, having those type of friends. We don't care what kind of car we drive. We don't care what vacation we went on, or how big our house is. We care about each other and talk about pretty powerful things. So that's my education. All the people around me that I'm so lucky to be around.
Yeah, we were talking earlier that time is the ultimate wealth. I think a close second to that is relationships. In baseball, certainly yields relationships. It's in a weird way, it's a small game, but most of those people you just called out were people outside of the game,
right?
And it's amazing just the different way that the people can impact your life,
right? And at the same time, they're all in the game too. You know what I mean? Like they weren't players or coaches necessarily, but they're all in the game in some way.
Sure.
And we all have an effect on each other. And you talk about small world. I mean, it's amazing. I'm in Sacramento in AAA in 2015. I'm in the third base coaching box, and the Sacramento team's behind me in the third base dugout, and a kid goes, Hey, Murph, you know a guy named Lloyd Gobert? And I'm like, yeah, Lloyd Gobert played for me at FAU way back in the day, right-handed pitcher from Illinois. He goes, and this was a player on their team. He goes, yeah, that's my dad. I'm like, oh, God. I know it's a small world, but I don't want to be coaching my former players' kids already. So it makes you feel a little older. But, yeah, it's a beautiful thing in that the game has a way to connect so many people. It's really amazing. It's a privilege.
It's such a harsh game in some respects, but it's also such a beautiful game in that regard.
You got to embrace it. I told a kid yesterday, you're trying to control this game. Whenever you try to control the game, it's going to deal you a really tough hand. Just meet the game halfway. Be part of the game. Be part of the game. And part of that game is struggling. Part of that game is the joy of a walk-off hit. Part of that game is not getting an opportunity. Just be part of this thing that we call baseball. Be part of it and meet it halfway. If the game deals you a fastball down the middle, then you're going to have an opportunity to whack it. If the game deals you a sinker 4 inches off and the umpire calls you out, just deal with it. And I think that it builds a thick skin. It builds a toughness in us that can prepare us for a lot of things in life. So that's why I think it's, the greatest game in the world. Other people would argue their games are, but I like to make fun of the other games.
So I don't think you've given an answer thus far where you haven't referenced kids or your son. You know, and if you look at the time of the departure from ASU and all that, your son was, you said 8 or 9 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's an odd blessing in that time, when you're essentially shut down from baseball, and yeah, you're really trying to work hard on being the example for him, but you're also now have found yourself with a lot more time for him, perhaps.
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, I haven't seen him in 6 weeks. My 17-year-old, he's been on the road doing this baseball thing for himself all summer. But it's a little more conducive to family, a little more. But the 6-month Major League season, there's no give. So, and he's got his own life going on. Now, my 3-year-old, yeah, he can be here with me and see him every day and every evening. Obviously, we go on the road every 7 days, but yeah, I mean, it's still a work in progress of how to spend more time with the family, but you find ways. You never get disconnected. We were talking the other day, and creation of FaceTime is a tremendous thing. Again, to me, I've learned in life my priorities are my children. I mean, that's what it is, and it's a healthy priority. And this thing that I do in baseball for the last 38 years is, it's a life work. It's a life work, and it's going to deal you a lot of different cards. But you're lucky enough to be in the game. You don't always hit a jackpot, but you're lucky enough to be in the game, and I consider myself lucky.
Yeah. So looking across the table at a guy like me, so 2 kids, they're 2 years old. I'm too dumb to know any better. For someone that's come on the other side of this with kids that have grown and are older, what is your advice to somebody in my shoes? Because and I guess the reason I'm asking this question, I know this is kind of a business show and it's about leadership. It really pains me to see people that don't look at their roles as parents as leadership roles. Right. And I think people look at it as a burden, or I got to get my kid here, I got to get my kid there, instead of looking at it deliberately and thinking, I want to help shape my kid for this, or shape him to be somebody that can impact the world, or just shape him to be somebody people can trust.
I'll tell you, you're touching my heart right now, because midway through the season, you're tired, you're run down, you're battle tested, and I will say this: being a good parent is truly, in my heart of hearts, more important to me than being a good coach. And I got a long way to go in both of them. But I know this, that parenting is very similar to coaching in that it's love and discipline in that order. And as kids get older, they get the amount of each gets a little closer. They can challenge you a little bit, and the discipline and the love get really close. But I think love always wins out. And I think that's the most important thing, is to learn about love and learn about what it really is and how to give it, how to receive it. And I think that'll guide you in parenting. Love and discipline in that order. There's going to be breaking balls thrown. You know what I mean? You got to learn to sit back and sometimes just take it the other way, or sometimes just take it. But I think the most important thing is love and discipline. And if they know what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, whether they like it or not, they're going to be in a good spot. And that's my definition of discipline. And your definition of discipline, and what the right thing to do is up to each individual parent. But I think if more people took a look at parenting, I don't say that it has to be couples together, co-parenting. I think that's probably more difficult. I think I would tell anyone it's easier.
Juggling act, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's easier to parent individually. And in my case, I had a village raise my son, my 17-year-old. But again, Harvey Dorfman, who's passed away now, a famous sports psychologist, he would say, Murph, it's love and discipline in that order. And they'll get close sometimes, but keep the order correct. Love on top of discipline.
Can you have one without the other?
I bet you can. I bet you people are just not prepared. I bet you people just have so much ego with their own ego, and they have so much their own. This kid gets in the way, and it's every day. And oh my God, really? And push it on their spouse, or don't realize that. Somebody told me one time, kids spell love Time. And then I tell them, yeah, you got to spend time with them, but you got to really be in the moment. You got to be present, really present. They have to sense your presence. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Last night I was the Incredible Hulk, and he was Captain America, and we were playing, and it didn't matter what was said in between us, as long as he sensed that I was in the moment with him, and he senses that love and that security. I think you go a long way to then being able to discipline them and teach them and all that kind of stuff. So it's not only love is, from kids' standpoint, is spelled Time, and I think being in the moment, real time, is what I call it, real time. Being in that moment with them is the most important thing.
Well, it's tough. And I think it's getting tougher. We have all this technology at our fingertips. It's helped our lives in a lot of ways. You talked about FaceTime. Plenty of ways, too. I think it's probably pulled ourselves away,
Right.
We've got mortgages to pay and all this stuff, and that phone with our work email constantly dinging, pulling us away. Mm-hmm. There have been times where, I try to make a big point of either putting my phone in airplane mode, turning it off, right, whatever, because there are more distractions than ever. And your point about truly being present with your kids, right, it scares me because you can't get that time back.
Yeah, it's interesting. The exercises we do with our phone, I would recommend everybody, spending 2 days without their phone, but with their family. And if you spend it with your family and 2 days without your phone, you're going, but what if I missed this call? What if I missed that call? Well, what if you had a person there and said, look, if something really, 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 big comes up, we'll let you know. And you could spend 2 days without your phone. After you did it, you'd be scrambling through your texts and your emails, and you'd have, whatever you'd have, and it would be over, and you'd be like, wow, I'm all caught up. Yeah. I made the five phone calls, and these other 7 can wait. I text people back, and nobody calls each other personally anymore anyways. Everybody just texts. So, you get all that done. You're like, whoa, I did that. 2 days without the phone, with my family, doing things. And it's a habit, and our habits become our reality. And I think it's a good exercise to go without your phone and realize how quickly you can catch up. And what is that really saying? Like you mentioned, time. It's so important. And we can't get it back, but we can be more efficient with our phone. We don't have to answer every text that moment.
Yeah.
We don't have to get it that day. Friends that don't text me right back, or I don't text them right back, and they go, hey, what's wrong? I'm like, bro, I'm busy. I'm working. Do you really need to hear me now? Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a shame, but like you said, there's both sides of it. I think we will come to a point where our young people realize they need to put that down.
I hope.
Yeah.
You've been on an elevator recently?
No, everybody's got their head down. Hey, go in the locker room today, right now. Go in the locker room.
Heads down?
Yeah,
that's
everybody's
an
on their
interesting perspective,
phone.
thinking about a big league
Everybody's
clubhouse.
on their phone. I would put a rule in. We haven't yet, but I'd put a rule in where, okay, phones are out. Not because they're dangerous, but they can distract you. Phones are out. You don't need to be connected to that. You're okay on your own. Talk about insecurity. You're okay on your own.
Yeah.
You don't need it. And
that was a big thing I did. So when I was in the corporate world still, I would have a no laptop, no phone policy for meetings. That was both with my team, and if I was in a boardroom or wherever else, all right, here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to close the laptops. We're going to put our phones in this box next to the door. Suddenly a 2-hour meeting is a 15-minute meeting.
Right.
It's amazing what we can do when our mind isn't divided a million different ways.
No, that's so true. That's so true. And you're in the batter's box, you don't have your phone with you. You know what I mean?
There's only one thing that matters.
Yeah, it's so true.
That's that level of focus that I think we absolutely miss.
And the greatest times of development in our life are not on our phones. The greatest time of revelation are not on our phones. The greatest time of learning is not on our phones. It just isn't. It's relating to people. It's being in the moment. It's figuring things out for yourself. How much time do you spend by yourself thinking purely about good things? You know what I mean? About what can be. I have this thing where I'll reveal to you, like sometimes at about 4:30 in the morning, I wake up. At my age, you don't sleep all night anyways. So I wake up at like 4:30 in the morning, and that wolf visits me. And it's a very negative wolf. And he or she's got me thinking, like negative stuff. What about this? Oh, this could happen. This could happen. That could happen. That could happen. This is you got so many things. And then I just decide, I sit up and I go, hey, this is BS. Get out of here. I'm not going to listen to this wolf. He visits me because he wants to test me, and I'm getting rid of him. You mean nothing. And it reminds me to sharpen my skills and be ready for the day. And it happens to me a lot, but I'm hyper aware of it, and just the awareness says this is nonsense. He's trying to drag me down. I'm not going to go there.
No. So I know we got to be cognizant of time. I know you got the Twins in town tonight, and we're getting to the end of time here, but I got one more thing I'm just really curious about.
Got it.
What's next for you? So obviously, the Brewers, it's a great thing here, and you've got this incredible atmosphere. Do you ever think of getting back in the college game? Do you want to manage the big league level? Do you like the role you're doing now? Or do you even not think about it? Because that's totally fair too.
Yeah, you know what? So that's one of the wolves that comes and gets me. One of the wolves that shows up is like 4:30. Hey, you need to be doing this. Hey, you need to. Hey, that's ego. I'm going to let it happen. Whatever happens, happens. What I want, be careful of what you want, because it might not be exactly what you think it is. Set standards for what I'll do. If I take another position in a professional life, I want to set standards that I really live up to, and not just jump at opportunities. Be a manager in the big leagues. There's only 30 managers in the big leagues at any one time, and there's more governors than managers. It's a tough position. College coaching, there's 300 Division I jobs. There's probably 50 that are real serious about making sure their baseball team goes. I'm not sure how many universities really care about how good their baseball program is. I think that you can find a lot of real capable people to coach in college. So what's next? I really don't know. I like what I'm doing now. I like the atmosphere. So nothing's going to be perfect. You can always find issues with it, but you try to make it perfect. And right now I'm living day by day, doing whatever I can. I'm looking at trying to help this team in some little way, beat the Twins tonight, and be with my family later, and get an opportunity to talk to some great friends, and go to the next day, and really not try to plot or look ahead or anything like that.
I think there's wisdom in that. We're always told we got to plan for the future. We got to have goals and all this stuff. And if we're not careful with that, it really pulls us away from the gift of the present.
I think so. I mean, it's never helped me. It's never helped me. I've got a bunch of instances, and when my college days, I was in demand a lot, and it distracted me from moments that I could not get back right now that I wish I had back. So, yeah, I try to just say, hey, this is what I do, and if other opportunities come, yeah, I'm going to have standards about, where I go next for sure.
Sure. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I really did. I had no idea what to expect, and again, for all those people out there that are not in the baseball world, probably a lot didn't make total sense, and yeah, but I feel privileged that we could talk and share a little bit. I really do. Thanks.
Well, I think there's tremendous insight, and I think the people in the business world will take a great deal away from it. So thank you. It's wonderful to see you, and it's wonderful to hear your wisdom after all these years.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate meeting up with you again.
I hope everybody found that interview as interesting as I did. I think there's a lot that we can all put to work right away in our own lives. And while baseball's a small world, there's certainly something that directly applies to business and, frankly, our own lives within this as well. So certainly a lot that we can all use there. And definitely be sure to share this with anybody that you think might find it useful. If you have thoughts on this, I would love to hear them. Drop me a message, chris@leadingbythebook.com, or shoot me a message on Twitter @chrisbook as well. So until next week, wishing you all a wonderful week. Hope you all have some fun. We will talk to you soon.